There we go. One look to the left. If you start to the left and the dog to the right. Maybe we should all get in a line. Yeah. Good idea. Good idea. To your right. Back. Let him turn around. Yes, no. Leonardo!
So, ladies and gentlemen, dear photographers, please sit down. Liebe Fotografen, können Sie bitte sitzen. Liebe Kamerateams, bitte setzen Sie sich. Please sit down so we can start a press conference. Thank you very much. Dankeschön. Dankeschön. Please sit down. And please, during the press conference, don't use the flash. Bitte während der Pressekonferenz kein Blitzlicht. Dankeschön. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this press conference screening the 60th International Film Festival in Berlin. Out of competition, the movie Shutter Island. And have a welcome, as usual, from the right, the producer, Brad Fisher. Next to him, also a producer. Have a welcome for Mike Medavoy. Playing the part of Chuck Aule and have him here on the festival in 2 movies. Have a welcome for Mark Ruffalo. I don't think you don't need them, yeah.
Let's just take these away, sorry.
A great fan of the festival, always good to have him here. Have a big welcome, playing the part of Dr. Cawley, Sir Ben Kingsley. Last time it was the Rolling Stones, now we also have a big cast here on the stage. Have a welcome for the director and also good fan of the festival, Martin Scorsese. Ten years after The Beach, it's a great pleasure to have him back here on the festival in Berlin. Leonardo Dicaprio. Next to him, playing his wife in the movie, playing Dolores Chanel. Have a welcome for wonderful Michelle Williams. And finally, also a man who made all this happen, a producer, Arnold Masser. First, before we start the press conference, I'd like to give this question to Brad Fisher, because I guess without him, we won't be sitting here. So, Bradley, can you start up? Give us a shortcut how you brought all this together.
Sure. The book I originally approached, and I thought it was pretty fascinating as a narrative in psychological terror, and I thought it would be a great thrill ride, and I was quite surprised as I read it to see how deep it was and how emotionally poignant the story was. So when we picked up the rights, Mike and Arnie and I at Phoenix, we gave the book to Lita Kalogridis, who wrote the script. From there, we developed it for about a year. And once we had something we felt good about, we sent it to Marty and Leo, and we're fortunate enough to have them both say yes. So that's how it got off the ground.
Okay, start the questioning. Please, here in the middle, your first question, please.
Hi, my name is Uffe Steeman, I'm from Denmark, and Mr. Scorsese and Mr. Dicaprio, you have now worked together in a number of films, so presumably you like working together. Could you tell us a little bit about what it is you like and how you do work together? Thank you.
Would you like to go first? Well, look, any actor would be a fool to not jump at the opportunity to work with Martin Scorsese. Every experience I've had, not only have I learned about what it is to be an actor, what it is to make movies, but he's got this infectious love of cinema, and it rubs off on everyone on the set, everyone around him. And each experience has been unique. It's been a progression. Now it's been 10 years. 10 years of really working together. And I think only through time can you develop a trust level with somebody. And I do believe we trust one another. We share the same tastes, and we know that we have the absolute best intention for the film. We have the same kind of commitment to make the best possible film we can when we're there. But quite simply, you know, as a, well, I'm not that young anymore, but as a younger actor, you'd, like I said in the beginning, you'd be a fool not to jump at the opportunity to work with somebody who I consider and many consider the definitive director of our time. You'd be an idiot.
Well, as Leo says, it's been 10 years, or nine or 10 years, and even though we're of certainly different generations, I find that as we work together on The Aviator and on Departed, that we were able to push further and find new ways and new levels of working. And I see him as a young man developing as a wonderful actor, an extraordinary actor. I mean, when I first saw him in What's Eating Gilbert Grape, I knew that. But as he's maturing as a person, that life, his life, is being channeled into the actual work. And I think this is something that's very, very, very happy to be around when this is happening with somebody with such extraordinary talent, to be able to focus that and perfect it and embellish it in his actual work, and to be part of that is quite something. So, you know, we've had this. The trust is really the key. It's a trust factor. I mean, we really learned it in Gangs of New York, and then primarily in The Aviator because it was such a difficult character. But we really reached a kind of comradeship, so to speak, in The Departed. In a way, we were both sort of waiting around to finish the picture. And
Yes, there's a question in the middle, please.
Yeah.
Do you have the microphone, please? Yeah.
Can I go?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Hi, Stephen Schaefer here from the Boston Herald.
What are you doing here?
What are you doing? I thought I recognized you. I thought I recognized
I'm having a
you.
great time here. What?
I thought I recognized you. What's happening?
Well, my editor specifically wanted to know.
He sent you
we
all
know
the way
this
here.
was a very intense, emotional movie up in Boston.
Yeah.
Making it. Did anybody have a good time when you were there? And for
My-
Marty and Leo, can you also? Are you going to do this again? This is number 4. Are you going to go for 5?
Did anybody have a good time making it?
I had a good time.
He was.
The food was great.
You want to answer? Should I answer? Who wants to speak?
You better.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a little bit.
I don't think fun is the operative word.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the operative word here. Challenging, intense, great work, leaving every day feeling like we had accomplished something. I mean, this was a complex jigsaw puzzle of emotional backstories and dream sequences and truth and fiction, and everything sort of submerges into one. So we were telling like almost a series of short stories. Each was more intense than the next. So it was challenging and fulfilling. As far as fun is concerned, you know, there were sequences, I have to admit, where Mark and I had 4 or 5 pages of dialogue, and the elements were being thrown at us by Mr. Scorsese, including like 2-story fans and rain dropping from the sky.
And that's always fun.
Especially when you don't know what the other actor is saying, and the director can't hear you as well.
Couldn't hear them anyway.
And you can't see the other director.
Can't see the other person.
And you don't know where you're going.
Yes.
There is one point I think I want to add, and since you're from Boston, is that the city of Boston was great to work in.
Yeah.
And the people were really fantastic, and they're great to the production company. So I think everyone here is happy to have been a part of it. And I think this is your second film, right? In
Second
Boston?
picture in Boston, yes.
And
After Departed, yes.
yeah, so that if since you're writing for the Boston paper, I think I'd add that to it.
I would agree.
Thank you.
We agree.
It's true.
It was also the year that Leo left the LA team and went for the Celtics.
Oh, that's right.
That did make for an uncomfortable finals,
That's
actually.
right,
going to the Garden.
Okay.
We were always talking about different projects. You know, if I'm lucky enough to work with him, I would consider it a gift. But no matter what's happened from my experience in working with this man, the biggest gift that he's given me is an appreciation for cinema and cinema's history, and an entirely new perspective on my view of this art form. And that's what's going to stay with me forever. I would only have my fingers crossed to work with him again.
So getting back not to number
No, I
5,
hope so,
so
too.
it's number
Yeah.
4.
No.
Sorry. Yes, please. Yeah, if you have the microphone, you are.
I'm up then.
And you're
So
standing.
let's talk more about the style of the film. Hello, Jan Lumholt from Svenska Dagbladet in Stockholm. One of the most enjoyable things for me when watching this film was that I felt that I was watching one of those classic movies from the 30s, 40s, 50s, but it was actually not on DVD. It was something new. It wasn't at a Cinematheque. And I guess when you make a film like this, being the big admirer of American cinema and cinema history that you are, I guess you get some inspiration from things. I guess in this case, I don't know, B-movies, film noirs, Val Lewton, Sam Fuller. I felt like watching Shock Corridor after seeing this film. Do you get some kind of inspiration? Do you advise your actors to watch the acting style of older films like this when you make a film that takes place in 1950?
Well, I think because I was 10 years old in 1952, I experienced the 50s firsthand in New York City, the Cold War, all of this, the paranoia of the Cold War, the secrecy. Even in the neighborhood I grew up in, there was a great deal of secrecy and paranoia. I mean, and the cinema itself, the movies I would go and see, were reflected this. Everything from
Laura.
you know,
Laura
to
Out of the Past.
Out of the Past to Invasion of the Body Snatchers, Don Siegel. But I think in order to use as a reference point for Sir Ben and Mark and Leo and all of us, really, Brad and everybody, I started screening pictures. And the first one I showed was Laura, and I felt that that Leo and Mark should see that. Dana Andrews, his body language, the war-torn vet who's half gone, who doesn't look anyone in the eye when he speaks to them and falls in love with a ghost. I thought this was perfect for them to get a sense of that time and place, and also the mystery of the film. Second one I showed was Out of the Past, Jacques Tourneur, for the mystery, the sense of mystery, the web. There's much I can say about that. And, of course, the Val Lewton films for mood and atmosphere, Cat People and I Walked with a Zombie, Bigger Than Life, Nicholas Ray. Many, many films as points of reference, even sometimes just for one scene, like in Crossfire, Edward Dmytryk, or in Let There Be Light, John Huston's film on the shell-shocked veterans, and the Battle of San Pietro and the Steel Helmet. These are reference points. And in some cases, in terms of the actual film, for me, what was interesting in the story, what was interesting in trying to depict the story on screen was using the history of cinema as a vocabulary, using the nature of that type of story, the visuals of that type of story, Gothic horror, psychological thriller, noir, German expressionism, basically. This is where noir comes from. As a vocabulary telling the story, but all through Teddy's head.
Very briefly, very briefly, this film is not in competition. Personally, I think it should be. What was the decision not to have it in competition?
I don't know. They asked me, and I said no, I guess, right, Mike?
Well,
what am I going to do in competition?
I think, yeah, I think,
You know what I mean?
you know, it's not in competition, but it's here, and we're happy that it's
And what
here.
if it didn't win, you know? Like it wasn't competent, it didn't win, you know? So, you know, it's a movie. I mean, I made a lot of movies over the years. There's another one. I hope you enjoy it. That's the best I could do.
Okay, there's a question on the right side, please. Could you stand up, please? Thank you.
Hi, Nirma Abdelghani, Abu Dhabi TV. And my question is to Mr. Martin. What was it about this novel that made you, the Dennis Leyen's novel, that made you want to bring it onto the big screen?
Well, I think, to be fair, I read the script first, Lita Kalogridis' script, and next day I read the novel. For me, basically, it was the emotional impact I had at the end of the reading of the script, the last two scenes, and actually it brought tears to my eyes. The last 3 lines of dialogue in the piece between Mark and Leo, and I wondered why. I knew why, but I couldn't tell how and why it had happened. I was taken down the line of this story by this deceptive script, you see, and the compassion that I felt for the character and the suffering of all those people involved. And I said, this is interesting. So I went back and reread each scene. Of course, it was a different scene then, many different scenes, and that was a big challenge and a desire, and I knew that Leo could do that, or at least we could try to do it. And so that was the thing. Whenever it really got very tough, I always had that kernel of that original impact of reading the script and feeling that way at the end.
It's interesting. Those last lines actually were the only difference in the ending between the book and Lita's script. She changed that element, which really redefined, of course, what happens, in terms of Teddy's consciousness at the end of the film. So I'm glad she did it that way.
Well, you're glad that Marty actually directed and went with it.
Yes, your question, please.
Hello, my name is Cameron. I am Turkish journalist from Turkish Press in Berlin. It's nice to meet you. It's nice to see you again, Mr. Dicaprio, Mr. Scorsese, Mr. Sir Ben Kingsley. My question goes to Mr. Dicaprio. Did you read the book about the movie? And what was different about your part for you? Thank you.
I think all the actors here should talk about that as well, but I think that, of course, I read the screenplay first, and yes, I did read the book. But the screenplay is a condensed version of what does happen in the book, but what Lita was able to do, and almost deceptively so, was pinpoint these emotional backstories that, again, were either truth or fiction or dream or reality, we don't know, but she was able to put them down on a very condensed way, and in this film, it is a highly charged emotional piece because of all these puzzle pieces. And it actually fooled me in a way. It fooled me in a way because there were so many of them that oftentimes I'd come to set and I'd start talking with our director and say, wait a minute, this is 3/4 of a page, but it's possibly the most important scene in the entire movie, isn't it? And he goes, yes, absolutely it is. If you don't accomplish this, and if we don't get a feeling of reality of Teddy's trauma, Teddy's past, and how it affects him now, the whole structure of the film will fold in on itself. So it was a complex film to do in that regard, because we were always surprised at how much we had to keep pushing this character emotionally. It felt like the more we uncovered one aspect of Teddy's mind or his past, the further we needed to push another element. And it kept getting darker and darker and more intense. You guys should answer too.
Yes.
For me, the screenplay was the perfect map of the journey. I didn't actually read the novel. I was entirely dependent upon the screenplay and then the collective interpretation with Marty and Mark and Michelle and Leo. And knowing very early on that, as was said earlier, the compassion with which this story is told does allow for very powerful emotional triggers in the audience. There are moments in watching this film for myself, I know for Leo, I'm sure for the rest of the cast here and producers, it's absolutely inevitable that you cry. It's like listening to a great symphony. You know the same moving notes are about to happen. You know exactly the sequence of notes, and yes, you cry all over again because it's put together with such compassion. You cannot have as a starting point anything that's going to trivialize or diminish or sensationalize the traumatized mind. You have to come at it from a point of view of healing and compassion, and that's where Mr. Scorsese's point of view is, and that's where all of us, however deeply we dug into our psyche on the set and however exhausted we left the set and went home, we knew that we were in the best sense of the word, very, very safe hands. So my map was Marty and the script, not necessarily the novel.
Mark?
I ended up reading the novel just as I like to work from novels sometimes because it just gives you a little bit deeper cut on a character that a movie can never fully put everything a novel has into it, and you get a whole narrative that goes on inside of a character's mind that isn't visual. But so I used the novel and of course the script, and then we worked quite a bit together in a really nice rehearsal process, which is rare, and really dug into the relationships and fleshed out it, made it very real for us and what we were after. Mel?
I guess I was like Mark, and I always find it really satisfying to work from a short story or from a novel because it does some of the work for you, that there's answers, real hard and true answers that are found in the book or in the story that you don't have to. It does some of the, like I said, it does some of the work for you. So I found that there's a really thorough psychological mapping of Dolores in the book that, it was totally available for me. And the writer and I were always sort of talking about, were there any other clues to add into the story? Were there any other missing puzzle pieces to add in? And it just gave me something to think about. It's a lot of time in your own mind when you're working, and it gave me something to sort of ruminate on and play around with. So it was really useful to me.
Yeah, a question here, please, in the middle.
Hello, I'm Sandra from Serbia National TV. Question for Leonardo. What do you have in common with Martin Scorsese, and how much does he believe in actors? Thank you.
Don't tell it to the second part.
We love the same Italian desserts.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
It's a big secret.
Yeah.
Like he said, we do come from different generations, but I grew up on his work, really. My first film, well, not my first film, but my first starring role was This Boy's Life with De Niro. So what did I do at 15 years old? I watched all of Martin Scorsese's work right away. And the first film that struck me, of course, was Taxi Driver. I'd never felt that emotionally betrayed by a character before. I was with Travis Bickle. I wanted to clean up the streets of New York. I thought there were detestable people out there, and all of a sudden he starts making a homemade assassination device, and I go, oh, wait a minute. Oh, what's going on? I just feel, through talking about film and art, we share this similar taste. Not exactly the same, but similar taste, and I feel like we have the same intent to push things when we're on set working together. And I can absolutely say that both of us will stop at nothing to get what we want out of a character or out of a scene. We'll keep going and going, and it's a wonderful working experience in that regard. Actually, I was thinking, when did Mean Streets come out?
73.
Ah, I was born in
You weren't
74.
born.
That's right.
Yeah, yes.
But my father is the same age as Marty. He's also from the same neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
They were born in the same neighborhood. Did you guys go to the same school? No.
St. Patrick's
yes.
Grammar School?
Yes, right. Yes.
Yeah.
Which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah. It's right on the corner of Mulberry Street. No, modern Mulberry. Yeah.
They're both Italian? Hey.
Yeah. But also, it's part of a thing of a continuum. If he likes my movies, and my movies are based on, in terms of the past, and whether it's, we're just talking about films, not literature, but you get into, going back to Griffith, going to DeMille, and up to John Ford, and Orson Welles, and Billy Wilder, and Otto Preminger, and Lubitsch, and Robert Siodmak, and all of this sort of things. And then he appreciates this stuff, so why not carrying on the continuity if somebody gets it? If they get it, they have to memorize it. It's just he has a reaction to it, and he works with it. And it's part of, we're talking about 100 years of cinema, going into another 100 years or so. It's not cinema anymore, it's something else, but it's going to still be stories told with visual language. So when somebody's when you're like that, and like when I showed you Bigger Than Life or Crossfire, for example, or Laura, when you saw Laura, it's really exciting in a way. I don't know what they'll do with it, but it's there, It can be passed on.
It connects us to a long tradition
that's
of filmmaking.
It is. It's a wonderful process, the whole pre-production process that we have with them. And I think every actor here will say the same thing, as would the set decorator and cinematographer, because it's like watching an artist access his own dreams, or like have a palette, and he's mixing the colors together to figure out what he's going to put up on screen. And he's looking into his own past and his backlog of cinema history, and you're there witnessing it with him, and something might be not the way he remembered, and say, that was cornier than I remembered,
right, yes.
or that's perfect, and he's talking to people during
And it's
that
interesting, when I do that, when we were looking at those films together, I'm looking at it fresh again, because I'm showing it to them. So it's like, it's not as, I've seen this 1,000 times. I'll talk to you about it tomorrow. No, I experience it again in another way, you see. That's very interesting. It's a good continuity, is what we're trying to keep.
And rarely do you ever get to see a maestro work. They don't let directors work long enough to become maestros. And he's definitely a maestro. Leo and I had a couple of days that were very moving watching you work.
Oh, God.
This, by the way, is the fourth film that I've been involved with Marty.
That's right. Go back, tell them what the titles were.
Well, New York, New York, Last Waltz, Raging Bull, and this one. So,
wow. That's a long time.
I'm the lucky one here in this combination.
You were asking about Martin Scorsese's relationship with his actors. From my point of view, I would say that Martin places the actor in exactly the perfect place that actor should be for that scene. I'm talking about how geographically the fellow actors are arranged, how the furniture is arranged, what lens he's using, where the camera is placed, how your fellow actors are lit, whether the light is coming from behind or in front, the amount of smoke in the scene. Every single element is worked out to give the actor the perfect place to stand. So that, to use the phrase, if they get it, they get it. We do get it. As soon as you walk onto a set of Marty's, you understand the scene and where it should go. It's an extraordinary gift to actors. It's a terrific act of trust. Also, Martin Scorsese is invariably the most intelligent person in the room, but he treats others as if they were as intelligent as him.
And thank you for that.
Makes actors feel wonderful.
Thank you for that, Mark.
So all feel enlightened. Yes, the question here, please.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Pavis from Radio RPR1, big German radio station. My question goes to Michelle Williams. How funny was it working with Leonardo? How funny is he on the set? And special question, how was it working again with Sir Ben Kingsley? Because you started your career with Species, and he was a bad guy in this movie 15 years ago.
Do you mean how? Does he have a good? Is he funny or fun?
I was trying to explain to you. You often say, instead of saying fun, you say funny, which is a little bit different.
Although he is both.
There you go.
That's better.
Especially in these real funny scenes you have to do.
Yes.
I don't know. Funny. I mean, I think the question was sort of answered before, and in a better way than I can say. Which it was fun. I don't know. I don't know how much fun it was.
Yeah. More fun here. Huh?
Yes. Here it's pretty funny. It was dark. It wasn't. It was intense. It was exhausting, and it's wonderful all at the same time, because you're doing what you love to do, and in the company of people that you never thought you would be allowed that close to, and so that has a huge sense of enjoyment and satisfaction. But fun, I don't know if it was fun, but he's a funny. I mean, you've all experienced what a funny guy he is. So, and Ben, we go back, Ben and I.
Yes. I first worked with you when you were 10 years old?
12, yeah.
12?
I was
deeply impressed
12.
with how committed you were to that scene. You were wonderful. You were absolutely extraordinary. And that was in Species, and she played the little girl who escaped and turned into the beautiful monster. It was wonderful. Wonderful, beautiful performance. Indelible.
Yeah, I remember that really well because Ben, I don't speak in the movie. I don't really have any words or anything. And Ben came up to me after a scene that we did together and said something that I'll never forget. And my mom went and ran and got a pen and paper and wrote it down because it was so touching. And I still have her handwriting in the paper. And the whole thing was really special.
Oh, that's really sweet. Wow.
Yeah, the question here on the right. Could you please stand up? Yes, please.
Hello, my name is Natalia and I'm from Poland. I have a question to Leonardo Dicaprio. Which of Mr. Scorsese's movies that you played in was the most demanding and difficult for you as an actor?
Probably this one. But I have to mention The Aviator just because that was the first time I walked on to a set working with a director of his caliber and actually felt just as responsible for the character in the movie myself. Because I did bring it to him, and luckily enough, he said yes to the project. So, I don't know, it was kind of a changing point for me. I hate to use that term, transitioning into adulthood, because for God's sakes, I could have been in the Army 4 times by that age. But it really did. It was a different level of responsibility that I felt for the character and the world that we were trying to depict. And it was very close collaboration between the two of us, very intense collaboration. So that was really a turning point for me. But I loved every single second of it. I wish I could go back and do that movie again. I really enjoyed that film. I could go on and on about that movie just because, there's sequences in that movie where he uses a different technicolor process to transition from the 20s, the 30s to the 40s, 2 tones of color, and the Coconut Grove changes, and his work with Dante Ferretti in that movie. Who also worked on this film, but the things that they rebuilt the Man's Chinese in Montreal. It was just a great collaborative effort looking back into history, depicting old Hollywood that way. And that character, I don't know, I could go on and on. I'll shut up.
So could you please all move your heads on stage to the left side? So we have here the next question.
Ja. Claudia Schulmerich, Weltexpress, Berlin und Frankfurt. Und ich habe eine Frage an den Regisseur.
I have a question to the director. Perhaps you need to use your earpiece or earphones.
Also meine Frage ist an den Regisseur. Wir haben gestern gesehen den Film, wo es den Prozess des Buches, also des Poems von Allen Ginsberg
about Allen Ginsberg's work. And today we've looked at something from the 50s or based on the 50s. There, in France, Germany, Austria, the same is going on. And my question to the director is whether he sees a similar social situation today, post 9/11, in other words. Do we have, again, a paranoia in society, paranoid reactions? And that is, of course, a phenomenon in which one doesn't know if one is being pursued or whether one is imagining that being pursued. So my question really is, did you take the 50s and this theme in order to tell us something about our world today? Or is it still not possible to address matters in this matter, for example, in the context of people coming home with trauma from Iraq, just as it was not possible really to tackle the issues in the 50s? That's what I'd like to hear from you on.
All right. Of course, I can really, all I can really say is that I was attracted to the material. And one of the reasons I was attracted to the material is because it's set in the 50s and because of the tone of fear and paranoia and secrecy and trauma. And this was Dennis Lehane's choice, of course, in the novel. And there's no doubt, I think, as I say, I grew up in the 50s. I grew up during the Cold War. I grew up expecting air raids every day. We were told that. This is what we were told. And so that, along with as I said, the invasion of the body snatchers, the soul being taken away from you, and the sense of fear and paranoia is certainly, I think, one of the reasons Dennis must have set the story there, and that's certainly one of the reasons I was attracted to the material. I believe that now. Yes, I certainly do believe in a fear and anxiety and paranoia of today in the modern world. There's no doubt. That's my own personal belief.
There's one thing I'd like to add, and that is that if there is paranoia in large part today, it's of government itself. The fear that people, and this, by the way, this movie is supposed to be an entertainment, and it is a piece of entertainment because it plays with your mind, and when you walk out of the theater, you basically have had an experience. But I think, to answer that question, the issue of fear is out there. It's obvious, but the mistrust of government, I think, is pretty palpable.
Your question, please. Yeah, could you please stand up?
Hi there. Hi, Leo. How are you?
Hi.
Hey, nice to see you again. I wanted to know, you're German.
I flew them all in.
You flew them all in. No, we know each other from German was excellent in the film. So, did you make your mother proud? And are we ever going to see you in a German film?
I hope so one day. That'd be wonderful. I don't know. You'll have to ask my mother. I think that she was happy with my German, though. She said that it was well pronounced and she understood it.
Yeah.
But back to the question, and I would love to work with a German filmmaker, and I'd love to do a film in Germany. That would be amazing. But about what you guys were talking about earlier, for me as well, this character was interesting because although he is violent at times, and he's lashing out in the world, and you're experiencing all these sections of his mind. It's just, at the end of the day, a fascinating character study of how a human being deals with extreme trauma. And historically speaking, it was set in that time frame because there was that immense amount of paranoia. And it was that specific time period that is so indicative of paranoia in the United States and war-torn veterans. But I really fell in love with the story of how one man creates a safety net for his own trauma and how he comes to terms with the intense pain of his past. I don't know. I just wanted to throw that in.
Yes, here in front, please. Please stand up.
Hello, my question is to Leonardo Dicaprio. I am Julia Lara, a Spanish horror filmmaker. I'm a big fan of you since I saw you a few years ago in Critters 3. Since you're also a producer, I was wondering, would you ever like to produce a movie to a young talent director like me? Making movies in Spain is cheaper.
Hey, man, give me your card. Let's start talking.
Okay. If you don't mind, at the end of the press conference.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That shows a bit about the Spanish industry at the moment, huh?
We have also a friend in common. I'll let you know later.
Tell him later.
So,
yeah.
okay. So far with the movie, with the business, let's get back to the film.
Yeah, we got to talk about the film.
Please.
Next question comes from the far back on the right
far
side.
Back. Yeah, thank you.
It's Radio Berlin. Frauke Gust ist mein Name, Mr. Leonardo Dicaprio. You speak German in that movie, and outside there's a lot of German fans waiting for you. Could you please say something in German?
And it was Alles klar.
Dankeschön. Next question, please.
Is everything all right?
Thank you.
I'm a Berliner.
Yes, here's a question in the middle, please.
Hello, guys. I'm
Dankeschön.
Roj Yunus, first Kurdish host here.
I just wrote that one. Ich bin ein Berliner. It's a good one, right?
Yeah.
The German. Yeah, I thought that it would be An interesting facet to Teddy, part of his paranoia, especially with that scene with the great Max von Sydow, who's just unbelievable in this movie as well. And you know, it's the beginning of Teddy's paranoia, and he was also at the liberation of Dachau, and so there's a suspicion that starts to come over him, and you can also tell that, I think, by speaking German in that scene, that he's not going to be duped. And maybe the audience gets a little more on Teddy's side in that sequence.
Thanks. In the middle, please.
Hello, I have a question from Kurdish television called Kurd One. To Mr. Scorsese, we love your old mafioso films, so my question would be, when are you going to make the next big mafioso film? With your old cast, maybe Joe Pesci, De Niro, something like Goodfellas too, maybe.
No, well, thank you very much. But how many do we make? Goodfellas, Casino, and, well, Departed is Irish. That's a different thing. But, yeah, they were of a style and of time and place. I mean, Goodfellas was a special style of film, of narrative storytelling, that I wanted to try visually and with the voiceover and a depiction of the lifestyle. And Casino was sort of a sequel to that on a higher level. I don't know if there's any place else to go from there. There is a possibility that Bob De Niro and I are talking about something that has to do with that world. There's no doubt about that. We're working on something like that, but it's from the vantage point of older men looking back. None of this running around stuff and, you know.
Okay.
Can I give you my card?
You want, yeah. I want more mafioso pictures in Kurt. I can't believe this.
There's a question on the right side, please. Could you please
He didn't
stand
like
up?
Age of Innocence, huh? Okay, no, he didn't go.
Hello,
Yes.
Ernesto Arrat from Santiago de Chile.
Search me.
Please.
I want to ask you, Mr. DiCaprio here.
Yeah, on the right side, please.
How was the challenging of this character, and how was the inspiration of Jim Stewart in the movie Vertigo, please?
A huge inspiration, actually. I mean, that was really the key for me, because so much of this character was really a balancing act of what extremes to go to and what scene. And I think, as Marty put in some of the press conferences earlier, I think that there's enough ambiguity in this film with some of the performances and the way the story is structured that you could have a completely different experience the second or third time watching the movie. It could take on an entire new meaning for you as an audience member. And we were always, all the actors were always really conscious of that throughout the course of the movie. Let's push this scene to this level, this emotional extreme for the second time around or the third time around. That'll be interesting for an audience to watch. And then it was, of course, up to Marty and Thelma to see to what degree they wanted to push it. But Jimmy Stewart in Vertigo was one of the first films I saw immediately, because here you are following this narrative of this guy investigating this missing person, but he becomes so obsessed with it and he's so passionate about it, and you start to realize, wait a minute, there's a backstory here. He's way too connected to what's going on. There has to be something else happening here that I can't quite put my finger on. And it's really all in Jimmy Stewart's performance.
Yeah.
He's brilliant in that movie.
And he loses her twice
Yeah.
in the film. 2 times.
Sad but true. This is the last question for today.
My name is Mahari Sigit from the African Refugee News. First of all, I would like to thank DiCaprio for your best role in Black Diamond.
Thank you.
We really appreciate it, and we were sorry you didn't win the Oscar for that.
Thank you.
Because you were really great, and you told a nice story.
Thank
a very tragic but nice story. The second question is really short for Mr. Scorsese. Mr. Scorsese, I'm not going to talk about the film because I was really emotional and with great actors, great screenplay. I want to talk about somebody who was my friend, Nick Nolte. I met him in Rome a long time ago. He was making a film with Susan Sarandon, and he was really a great actor. Now I see that he's having a bad time. Can you do something to help him? Because really he needs help. He needs friends.
Sure, we think of Nick all the time. And you know, I worked with Nick twice on New York Stories and the great performance in Cape Fear. And so I always think of Nick. If something comes up there's no doubt I will, see if we can work together again. Thank you.
So, and I'll thank you here being for Shutter Island out of competition. Thank you, Brad Fisher, Mike Motherboy, Mark Ruffalo, Sir Ben Kingsley, Martin Scorsese, Leonardo Dicaprio, Michelle Williams, and Arnold Messer. Thanks for being here on the festival.
I've never seen more cameras anywhere in my life. Anywhere. Thank you all. Danke. Thank you.